Hello, everybody in Facebook world. Good morning, Boker Tov, Melanie Phillips. How are you today?
Good morning to you. Very well, thank you.
It was such a success, the interview with you last time. I'm like, wait, let's do this again. People are so starving to hear the insight that you have to say, and I think it's wonderful to be able let's do it again.
I'm really very, very heartened and cheered by the fact there are so many thousands of people who think just like me and just like you.
And I think it's a lot, from my perspective, being someone who's very media savvy and we're brainwashed in a very strong way. And sometimes people come reading a newspaper and like, wait a second, no, I don't agree. But then you can't sit at the Shabbos table and say you don't agree because you think everyone else is brainwashed also. So it's hearing this perspective that you have to give, which is very refreshing.
I think there are two problems. First of all, the media tends to talk with one voice. The media, the intellectual elites, tend to talk with one voice, which is the voice of liberal universalism. And it's not just that it's a particular point of view which is pretty well the orthodoxy in the thinking world. It's also that you're not allowed to have an alternative point of view because the liberal universalist point of view is considered to be the only moral, decent, conscience-driven viewpoint. So anyone who challenges it is made to feel a bad person. Well, who wants to be made to feel a bad person? Who wants to have the unspoken or possibly even spoken accusation that, you know, you are a racist or a bigot or an imbecile thrown at you across the dinner table?
Right. And I think one term you used last week, which really hit a chord, was I think post-fact. Like we're in the post-fact generation.
Yeah. Well, that's what in the crucible of reason, our universities, we abolish the idea of truth. Anyone who's educated knows that it's the sign of stupidity in the extreme to believe there is such a thing as objective, absolute truth. Everybody who's educated knows that everything's a matter of opinion, and therefore everyone who's educated, because they don't believe in truth, is credulous to lies, and that's really why we're in the pickle we're in.
Right. And I think it's important that you use that term and people hear about it so that they can begin to compartmentalize what they're reading and hearing through that lens as well. So now we know the risks and the dangers exist out there, but yet there's a certain optimism that I've heard you speak about. What is the reasons for your optimism?
It's really quite comical because I'm not exactly known for my optimistic take on life. People associate me with, doom-laden warnings about the decline and collapse of Western civilization. I think we're in the middle of a revolution.
Wow.
It's a cultural counter-revolution, led, directed, driven by the people, the ordinary, decent, sensible, middle-of-the-road, true centre ground, apolitical, conscience-driven people of America, Britain and Europe, who have just risen up in revolt against the dominant narrative, to use their term, of the entire political, media and intellectual establishment of the West, which ultimately is all about denying the validity, integrity and decency of the Western nation state. We've been told for decades that the Western nation is basically a bad thing because the West is bad because it imposes an idea of cultural exclusivity and superiority through which it has oppressed the developing nations of the world. The West has done this through the Western nation. The Western nation, because it's exclusive and racist and bigoted and all the rest, leads inexorably to nationalism, which leads to hatred, which leads to war and genocide. So in order to remove the danger of war and genocide and to expunge hatred from the human breast altogether, you have to basically destroy the Western nation, the independent Western nation, and you must replace it by a kind of brotherhood of man template, otherwise known as transnationalism or universalism, in which transnational institutions like the European Union, like the United Nations, like the International Criminal Court, or like human rights law, the body of international human rights law, these must trump national laws and institutions. And as a result, you deny democracy, you deny freedom. This is the paradox. In order to protect freedom, supposedly, you deny it. Now, the peoples of Britain, Europe, and America have had enough of all this. In their very different ways and in different contexts, they've risen up against this through the Brexit vote, in which the British people have said, we no longer want to be ruled by some faceless, nameless bureaucracy based in Brussels, which we cannot vote out. We want to express our own culture through our own democratic parliamentary institutions, which represent our own, yes, Western, British history and traditions.
Right.
And that's why we want out of Europe, out of the EU. In Europe, mainland Europe, they're saying something rather similar, in that the European Union, through its transnational, multicultural, multinationalist approach, which denies the integrity of the nation based on its own culture, the European Union has imposed a doctrine of mass immigration, the mass movement, the free movement of peoples. And mass immigration has brought into Europe untold millions of people, mainly but not exclusively from the Muslim world, who in large measure bear ill will towards the West. Not all of them. Some of them are undoubtedly refugees who want the protection of the West. They want to live as Western citizens. But an untold number bear the West ill will, and an untold number of those actually have the means to do the West ill will, as we've seen, to do the West serious harm, as we've seen tragically in the last, in recent days, in the terrorist attack on the Berlin Christmas market. So the people of Europe had enough of all this, and so they're in revolt. And in America, people are in revolt against the idea that America is basically born in original sin, that it has to repay its debt to the world by withdrawing its power and prestige from the world, and by empowering bad people, and by basically denigrating itself, both internally telling itself that it is a country that is founded on terrible ideas of racism and bigotry and all the rest of it, and abroad it's thrown its weight around and has oppressed the peoples of the world. Now, no country is perfect. Right. America does have a terrible past in its history of slavery. But America has been, the protector and the beacon of freedom in the world. And consequently, the people have had enough of this in America, and that's why they voted for Mr. Trump. Now, we don't know how Mr. Trump's going to turn out, but that's what he represents. Right. He represents the desire for America to once again assert itself as the shining city on the hill, as the great beacon of progress and hope for the world, as the embodiment of freedom and democracy, and as a country, as a nation, which is going to defend itself and defend its own national interest against the threats to itself and to its values. That's what the people of America voted for. Whether they're going to get that remains to be seen. But all this speaks to me of a revolutionary moment in which the idea of the West as being a great place to be, where we're proud of its values, and the Western nation as the means by which we embody those values, that idea now has the best chance in my professional lifetime of being reasserted. And that's why I think we may be on the verge of a Western spring. Wow.
And when you say Western spring, what does that mean? We're on the verge of meaning what? Okay, so the West is going to be more self-secure and stands up for the freedoms we're supposed to. How is that going to help the West? How is that going to help the world?
Well, it will help the West because it will first of all mean that we once again want to defend ourselves against the threats against us. Right. We don't think we can defend ourselves. We don't think we should defend ourselves.
Right, that's also one point.
In Britain, we have wound down our defences to the point where we simply cannot defend ourselves. The prevailing liberal, internationalist, universalist wisdom is that there's something sort of slightly indecent about the West trying to defend its own national interests, because of course the West is bad. Right. And the only time we should use our military might is to defend the oppressed peoples of the world against threats to them, because we're responsible for them, because we created their oppression. That's the way it works. So a Western spring means that we will find the means to defend ourselves without being cringingly apologetic to everybody for doing so, and without what we've done is prevented ourselves from defending ourselves, because we've told ourselves that just to sort of even name Islamist extremism as a profound civilizational threat, even to name it, even to call it by that name, is itself a form of bigotry, and therefore we cannot even name it.
Right.
So this is the terrible damage that we've done to ourselves. And then, I just believe that societies are healthy and civilized when they look after each other, when they put each other first. Now, to put each other first in a society, you've actually got to feel invested in that society. You've got to feel you belong. You can't feel you belong to a transit camp. You can't feel you belong to something which is merely an expression of some globalist ideology. There's nothing to hang on to, nothing you can identify with. Mm. And so the paradox of all this is that in order to defend decent values and freedom and democracy, we have to reassert the Western nation. We have to reassert something which the prevailing liberal wisdom has told us is bad because it's exclusive and therefore racist.
So you mentioned Britain with the Brexit vote definitely going in that direction. America with the vote for Trump going in that direction. Germany's about to have elections. What do you? Do they have a chance of also going in this direction? Are they lost? Are any of the options there one that can take them in this direction as well?
I think the countries of Europe, mainland Europe, have a problem because snapping at the heels of democratic politicians are people, groups, organisations, political bodies which are truly racist, truly neo-Nazi, truly potentially fascist. And America has that too. Germany has that too. Mrs. Merkel's problem is that she is kind of trapped by her own policy of having embraced Germany's enemies in the way that she has. And it depends whether the mainstream democratic conservative opposition to her can get it together to articulate a defence of authentic, legitimate German values based on democracy and the legitimate desire of a nation to protect itself against those who wish to do it harm, whether the traditional legitimate conservative opposition to Mrs. Merkel can get that together. Because if it can't, then Germany faces a choice between a political establishment which will continue to open it up to its mortal enemies, right, and groups which really are nasty and neo-fascist, but which are articulating a view among the mainstream population for which wants to protect its democratic institutions, giving expression to its legitimate desire to express its own culture and traditions. And those people, I'm afraid, throughout Europe, throughout Britain, are being demonized. The problem that we have in Britain and Europe, and in America also, is that the people who want to reclaim decent national, Western national aspirations are being lumped together with those who are not decent at all, but are ultra-nationalist, fascist, neo-Nazi, Ku Klux Klan and all the rest of it. Right. And if traditional conservatives are lumped together with those people, that does two things. It empowers those really nasty people because it legitimizes them. Because if we're being told that those obnoxious views are now entrenched through Brexit, through the election of Trump, at the pinnacle of British and American politics, then those true racists and bigots can come forward and say, hey, we're now legitimized. Right. And at the same time, it drives legitimate national aspirations to a place where people have nowhere else to go. And so they're much more likely to hang their hat on, say, Marine Le Pen in France, because they've got no more mainstream, conservatively minded alternative that they can turn to.
Right. So I want to ask one final question, which I think can bring this together for many people. And I'm going to touch upon a concept you mentioned. You said that what's happening today is a counter-cultural revolution. Not the cultural revolution, but the counter-cultural revolution. Why is what's happening today the counter-cultural revolution? What was that cultural revolution that happened that we're now...
The cultural revolution that happened was what's taken place in the West over the past 4 or 5 decades, which was it Mao Zedong or Chou Enlai, one of those guys who coined this phrase, the long march through the institutions. It was the realization by communistically minded individuals that you couldn't really expect the workers to rise up and capture the economic and political levers of power. What you could do was capture the institutions of a culture, undermine them from within, and turn them so that they turned against Western values and the West itself. And in Britain, that happened to the letter. There was no resistance. The media, well, the universities particularly from the start, education, the universities, the media, politics, the law, all the institutions of the culture were undermined in this way. And that has happened in America too, and it happened in Europe as well. These countries are all different. This counter-revolution took different forms.
And Israel.
And in Israel also it has made incursions, certainly in the universities. So it's happened at different paces and in different contexts, and it's taken different forms. But that was the revolution. It was a revolution, it was a cultural revolution mounted against Western values and the institutions of the West. And what I see happening now in this great revolt by the people of Britain, America and Europe is a counter-cultural revolution. They are trying to take ownership again of the ideals and integrity of Western civilization, and whether they succeed is very much an open question. For sure, we can see from the hysteria of the left liberal establishment in Britain and in America in particular, that establishment, this is the first setback, the first defeat they've had in 4 or 5 decades of what I would call, and others call, the culture wars.
Right.
And my goodness me, they are not going to give up.
Right.
This to them is a declaration of war. Brexit, the election of Trump, is for them a declaration of war, and they are going to fight it by fair means and foul, mainly foul, to undermine Brexit, to undermine Trump, to delegitimize Brexit, to delegitimize Trump, to delegitimize and demonize all who voted for Brexit and Trump, regardless. And we are going to see a hell of a fight. Who's going to win? I don't know, but I feel very optimistic because at least the fight is now on, and at least millions of decent, reasonable, sensible, sane people in Britain, America and Europe have now nailed their colours to the mast and have come forward to try to reclaim Western civilization from its enemies.
There you have it, folks. Melanie Phillips, optimistic, right? And it's all said logically, bringing everything into context. Melanie, it's a pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Always a pleasure, Abby. Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Shalom, everyone from Jerusalem.